Hi everyone, I'm Shelley and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. I'm back with another Question the Narrative video, and today's topic is megaliths and pre-Adamic civilizations. This is a really interesting topic that I have visited before, but an email that I got, you're not going to believe this, back in February of 2023 that I just happened to get to now made me want to think about this again and possibly do another video about it. Recently, I did mention megalithic structures and who could possibly have built them in another video, and I mentioned the possibility that it could have been from antediluvian giants. And I think that that is certainly still the case, that it could be possible that it was antediluvian giants. But what I'm going to share with you today is something that I also think is very possible, because we're going to be talking about possible pre-Adamic civilizations. And yeah, I'm showing fairies and things like that here. I'm not sure exactly what types of beings there may have been pre-Adamite time. I know that probably doesn't sound right. And I'm not even going to say that I have even come to a conclusion about the possibility. I'm saying that, yeah, I think that there is a chance that there was a civilization before Genesis 1, chapter 1. I believe that it is possible that the earth was already there. It already tells us in Genesis 1 that there was water. But it's not a hill I'm going to die on. And I'm going to go over why there are people who think that. I just think that it's very interesting to think about. But again, I'm not going to say one way or the other, yeah, this is absolutely the case. I will also be going over, I'm trying to find this. I will be going over an article by Chuck Missler, and he talks about what is called the gap theory, and that is a time period where some people do believe that, yes, there was a pre-Adamic civilization. But first, let's go to this email that I got. It says, "Hi, Red. I hope all is well today. Sorry I didn't see your name on your YouTube video about the existence of elves and fairies. You've certainly peered into the rabbit hole. I've been delving into this subject, the pre-existent worlds and other creatures, as a part of seeking the truth of Yahuwah for about 40 years. I don't know if you are aware of Rob Skiba, who passed away during CVID, but he was a friend. I was on his broadcast 4 times, and we were just getting started. I really started digging after my initial discoveries of the various Hebrew words translated as serpent, but which mean much more when looking at their true Hebrew meanings. From there, I dug deep and investigated Nephilim and Hasatan, etc. I just want to point out here that I have actually looked at the website for the person who wrote this email. His name is Tim Dyer, and this is fascinating what he has to say about it. So I will actually leave a link in the description box to that, which this has nothing to do with today's video, though. I may do one in the future, though. There is much that we don't and can't understand. Much knowledge has been so lost so as to be impossible to rediscover. It doesn't help that the libraries of Alexandria were destroyed and that much other knowledge has been purposely hidden. I'm writing because I would like to bring up the megalithic structures, which have in recent years been uncovered more and more as technology allows us to discover them. The fact that science cannot conclude how they were built adds dimension to the probability that there was a pre-existent world civilization of unknown characteristics. How would they go about moving 1,000-ton blocks of stone 10 feet, let alone 10 or 100 or 500 miles without modern equipment? And even our modern equipment could not do it. There is no doubt remaining that there was a pre-hunter-gatherer worldwide civilization which was obliterated, the time of legends. Thus, Yahuwah's promise that he would not again flood the entire earth after the flood of Noah's era. My best guess is that the previous flood was that of the Younger Dryas, which occurred approximately 12,000 years ago. I always had trouble with the young earth position as it didn't fit much of the evidence. I enjoyed your video about elves and fairies. As mentioned above, these are deep rabbit hole subjects which can drive us bonkers as we look for supporting evidence. Also, in my opinion, much of the evidence has been lost or even purposely destroyed by the seed of Cain, which dominates in the world today. It also doesn't help that the translated Bible has been utterly compromised by men who have not heeded the final warning of Yahuwah in the revelation of Yeshua HaMashiach. So thank you so much, Tim. I'm sorry that took me so long to get to your email. I'm slowly working through them. So if you sent me an email and I haven't responded yet, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not going to respond. Sometimes it takes me quite a bit of time. In this case, like a year and 4 months. This email brought up a lot of terms that I should probably go over before even getting any more into this video. So first of all, we will talk about the Younger Dryas, because it mentions that Tim believes that the megalithic structures were built during the Younger Dryas. So let's take a look at what that is. The Younger Dryas was a period in Earth's geologic history that occurred circa 12,900 to 11,700 years before present at the end of the Pleistocene epoch. It is named after the alpine tundra wildflower Dryas octopetala because its fossils are abundant in the European, particularly Scandinavian sediments dating to this time frame. The two earlier geologic periods where this flower was abundant in Europe are the Older Dryas and Older Dryas, respectively. Oh, Oldest Dryas and Older Dryas. But let's just worry about the Younger Dryas right now. So the Younger Dryas was preceded by the Bowling-Allerod interstadial when European temperatures were warm enough to support trees in Scandinavia. The abundance of Dryas octopetala and the corresponding absence of plants adapted to warmer climates shows that Europe had reverted to glacial conditions during the Younger Dryas itself, and the local severity of the cooling approached that of the last glacial maximum. So the Younger Dryas was basically an ice age that happened around 12,900 years ago or so. So when he mentioned the Younger Dryas and the possibility that these megalithic structures were built around that time, or I would have to say it would be before, he also talks about a previous flood. And that is something that a lot of Christians don't know, that there are Christians who believe that Noah's flood was not the only flood, but there was actually a flood that happened before Genesis 1. So This I actually got this from Biblical Hermeneutics, and it just says, which water is Peter referring to in 2 Peter 3, 5-7. So let's actually, I have 2 Peter 3, 5, and 6 pulled up, and it says, for they deliberately overlook this fact, that the heavens existed long ago, and the earth was formed out of water and through water by the word of God, and that by means of these the world that then existed was deluged with water and perished. So the question here, it says, in 2 Peter 3, 5-7, the apostle said, and it was just what I just read to you. I'll just read too quickly. For this they willingly are ignorant of, that by the word of God the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, whereby the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished. But the heavens and the earth, which are now, by the same word, are kept in store, reserved unto fire against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. And then here it says in Genesis 1:2, we see, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So there are people who believe that the fact that the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters indicates that there may have been another flood before the 7-day creation period of Adamic times. So let's just read on here. And again in Genesis 7:17-23, we see the occurrence of another flood. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bare up the ark, and it was lift up above the earth. And the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth. And the ark went upon the face of the waters, and the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl, and of cattle, and of beast, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man. all in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land died, and every living substance was destroyed, which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowl of the heaven, and they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. Which of these incidents is the apostle referring to? Is it the flood that was on earth during the recreation, or the one that took place in Noah's time? I will leave a link in the description box to this and all of the other articles that I used in today's video in case you wanted to go through and just see what the answers were, the replies to this question. But I showed this to you just to give you an illustration that, yes, there are people who believe that the waters in Genesis 1-2 that are mentioned were there because there was a prior flood. And we can actually, this ties in to the gap theory. And this is the last term that I'm going to be going over with you just from this email. And I don't know that he specifically said the gap theory, but he was referring to it when it comes to the time period before the Adamic civilizations, before the hunter-gatherers. So Chuck Missler says, ever since it was originally suggested by Thomas Chalmers in 1814, there have been two reactions to the so-called gap theory, either to dismiss it completely or to misapply it. We will attempt to do neither. Let's start at the beginning. Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. This is certainly straightforward, and if you fully grasp that verse, you will have no problem with any other verse in the Bible. It is the next verse that raises some basic issues. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And that is Genesis 1:2. The words without form and void, I don't know how to say that, but this is tohu vabohu, will become critical elements of our vocabulary. This means without form, confused. This means void, empty. The W-vav between them is the conjunction and. When we examine a declaration of God in Isaiah, we note an apparent contradiction. Isaiah 45:18 says, for thus saith the Lord that created the heavens, God himself that formed the earth and made it, he hath established it. He created it not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited. I am the Lord, and there is none else. The same word for vain, tohu, without form or void, appears in both verses, and would appear to contradict the declaration in Genesis 1:2. The phrase in Genesis 1:2 also appears in Jeremiah. Jeremiah 4:23 says, I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, and the heavens, and they had no light. Whenever you find an apparent contradiction in the biblical text, we should rejoice. It may be what the rabbis called a remez, a hint of something deeper. It's like a signpost saying, dig here, a treasure is hidden here. So this compels us to more carefully examine the passage in Genesis 1:2. The verb was is actually a transitive verb indicating action, and the word order, normally conjunction verb subject object, is reordered to suggest the transitive pluperfect form, had become. It is so ordered in the International Standard Version. It is the identical transitive verb which appears in Genesis 19:26, where Lot's wife became a pillar of salt. Furthermore, we also find that the initial conjunction and is an adversative conjunction, but, and is so rendered in both the Septuagint and Vulgate translations. It often suggests a significant time delay. Putting this all together suggests the following rendering. But the earth had become without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. There appears to be an interval of some kind, perhaps eons, between verses 1 and 2. It would seem that the earth was not originally without form and void, but had been subjected to some kind of catastrophic judgment prior to the sequence that continues in Genesis 1. This possibility may also explain when Satan fell. We know that the angels were created prior to the earth. We find Satan had already fallen in Genesis 3. The mystery is, when did he fall? It appears that there are substantial scriptural references to his rebellion, his agenda, and the subsequent catastrophic judgment that ensued. I just want to add in here that the article that I was reading by the person who sent me the email, he will actually call into question the even involvement of Satan in Genesis 3. And again, if you're interested in that, he has a very good article about it. I'm still studying the whole thing. But anyway, this also raises the whole issue of the origin of evil, and why hasn't God simply wiped him and sin out completely? It is also disturbing to recognize that Satan tempted Jesus by offering him the kingdom, power, and the glory in the temptations recorded in Luke. How could Satan lay a legitimate claim to these? So that's neither here nor there when it comes to this topic that we are discussing today. But what this does go to show us is that, yes, this verse can be translated that there was a significant period of time, and like Chuck Missler said, perhaps eons, between verses 1 and 2. So the question then is that if something happened, if some form of judgment happened that made the earth without form and void, was there a civilization that was living here at that time? Now, yes, that article suggested that it possibly was when the angels fell, and there are some who believe that it was an angelic civilization who was living on the earth at that time, and I think that's a possibility. Again, this isn't something, it's not a hill I'm going to die on. I just think that it's really interesting to think about. But it does bring up the fact that there are so many similar creatures in mythologies around the world, and just wondering where they came from. And so the question is, could some of these creatures have been from that pre-hunter-gatherer period, or the pre-Adamic civilizations? Could they have been holdovers from that time? But what I'm going to talk to you about now is the megalithic structures. Because something about the megalithic structures that is really puzzling to me is that you have these intricate, beautiful megalithic structures. And now, whether it may have been built in antediluvian times by the Nephilim, who would have had the instructions from the Watchers and would have been able to build very exquisite and technical buildings, and would have had the technology and also just the bulk, because they were Nephilim, to transport these materials. Or again, it could also have been a pre-Adamic civilization. But one thing that always bothered me about the megalithic structures is that, first of all, some of them, again, absolutely stunning, while others seemed very, very primitive. And so as we look at these megalithic structures, just the discrepancies between what they look like and how, again, primitive some of them are. I always thought to myself, but if these were Nephilim, I always assumed they were Nephilim. But no matter what they were, if they were beings that had these technologies that we just don't have today, even though if you look at this now, we look at this now and scientists can't figure out how this was built. Now, I know that there are some who believe there was some sort of mold that these were actually poured into place, and I think that's certainly a possibility. I'm not a builder, so I would certainly never say that they're wrong, because I wouldn't know. But the appearance of, again, the primitiveness is really what I never quite understood about these megalithic structures, because I just thought to myself, if they had all this technology and if they had all of this knowledge from either the Watchers or from being a pre-Adamic civilization who was able to transport things like this. Oops, that's something that I was supposed to show before. Anyway, they didn't build that. Anyway, now I lost my train of thought. Why do so many of these structures just look so basic? That's what I keep thinking, because I could almost imagine if these were on a smaller scale, I would, in my probably indoctrinated mind, just imagine some sort of natives kind of hoisting these things up in place, people who really didn't have, a whole lot of sophisticated thinking. But a few weeks ago, I was on Instagram and I came across this account. I followed this account for a very long time now. I'm the Improbable Dreamer. And he posted this. And obviously it looks like it's AI, which is, it doesn't matter to me. But it really opened up my imagination as to what the answer could be. Is it possible that these, what I'm thinking are primitive structures, like even Stonehenge looks primitive to me. Just, if you discount the size of it, the size of the stones, the weight of the stones, just the entire, and I know that it has to do with the solstice too. I'm talking just about the appearance of it. What if that's not what they originally looked like? So here in this first rectangle here, we have what certainly seems to be more technological structures. And then here, this has a hexagon shape. And again, this is just AI. This is just from someone's imagination, but I think that it could hold credence because over time, so here we have, if this is the Younger Dryas period, so this would be before the Younger Dryas, during the Younger Dryas period, we've got this ice age happening and erosion suddenly starts to occur. And so as you can see, these structures are starting to dwindle down and not quite look exactly like they did before. And then in fact, we have just the passage of time is building up the soil and the snow, obviously, around this otherwise hexagonal shape. And then down here, now we are through this Younger Dryas period, but these structures have been very, very eroded, almost to the point that, well, no, not even almost, to the point that they don't look even like a semblance of what they did before. And even this here, like to me, this here now looks like a volcano. And I have questions, even about the mountains by where I live. They certainly don't seem like they were natural structures. They seem like they were placed there somehow. I think that I've mentioned this before, are spoil tips or mining rubble. But even you can even think about some of these volcanoes that we're seeing, some of these mountains that we're seeing. Could they have been these more intricate buildings in a much earlier period of time? And they've now eroded to the point where we can't even tell what they once looked like. And so that's really what I'm thinking about when it comes to these megalithic structures. And now this email that I received today, again, it just really opened my mind to, is it possible that it may have been a pre-Adamic civilization that built these structures and that they didn't look anything, I'm talking about the structures, that they didn't look anything at all like what they look like today? And what could have possibly built them? Could it have been some of these holdovers from that time period? I don't know. That's just speculation. Again, something interesting to think about. And again, I'm going to say it that I haven't made up my mind about what I think about the possibility of a pre-Adamic civilization. I'm kind of on the fence about that. But this channel and this series in particular are all about questioning things, and I thought this was just a fun rabbit trail to go down today. Yes, I say rabbit trail because I'm a homeschool mom. But anyway, that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one either here or over on Instagram. And if you like my work and would like to support my channel, I will leave a link in the description for my YouTube membership, or you can just click on it right on my channel page. And I hope you have a great day.